So today we are going to take a look at WisdomAI. Wisdom is your AI data analyst. It's a tool that lets anyone in your organization talk to your data as naturally as they would talk to one of their colleagues or someone on the data team. So with simple natural language prompts, users can create charts, they can pull metrics, dig deeper into anomalies in the data, and generally surface insights directly from production data. So today we'll start by exploring the front end of Wisdom. We'll look at the main interface where users ask questions and can build visualizations. Then we'll shift to the back end and look at how this concept of domains work in Wisdom. And this is really how we give the AI a deep understanding of your data model, of your business definitions, and of all the institutional knowledge related to your organization and your data. So we'll really see how a domain sets up guardrails to ensure that the insights Wisdom produces are both trustworthy and actionable. Before we dive in, for this demo, I'll be using an imaginary scenario with some synthetic data. Our example company is called Trailblaze Gear. They are a cycling apparel and accessories brand that sells both through retail stores across the US and online channels also. We'll explore their sales data to uncover some insights. We'll walk through some real workflows. And by looking at WisdomAI through the lens of a prospective customer, you'll get a grip of what Wisdom can do in terms of providing value to actual business users. So let's dive into the product. What we are looking at here is the main chat interface that your users will interact with. So this looks a lot like ChatGPT and a lot of other chat interfaces with other LLMs like Gemini and Grok, for example. But think of the difference here as this is ChatGPT that has connection to your enterprise data as well as all of the context and institutional knowledge. So if I don't know anything about the data set that Wisdom is connected to, I can do something like this. I can say, explain the data that you are connected to. And what Wisdom's going to reply with is a brief summary of what the data is, some of the actual tables and descriptions that it has access to. And if I scroll down, it has also given us some recommendations for what types of questions I could ask Wisdom and what it would be really good at answering. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, tell me about the top 10 selling products. Firstly, it's given us a summary of what it's going to do. We saw that this AI workstream opened up and it has since closed, and we see an output. Here we have a bar graph where it has listed our top 10 selling products, the number of products each has sold, and we can do a few things with this visualization. So if I click this icon here at the bottom, it gives us a natural language, easy to understand description of exactly how WisdomAI came to this conclusion, how it generated this result. And it's explained some of the context that it has recognized in our question. I can also click this pencil icon at the top and I can edit this visualization here. So in this editor section, we've got a typical drag and drop framework where I can move different dimensions to the X or the Y axis. So this should be a very familiar interface if anyone's used a Tableau or a Power BI before. But we also have access to the actual SQL, which Wisdom has run against our data to generate this graph. We also have an AI styler. So if there was any visual element in this graph that you would like to change, maybe the color, maybe you want to see a different background, you could type your request in natural language into this box here, and Wisdom would execute that for you. Lastly, we can also see the underlying data which is powering this graph. So if we want to get into the specifics and see the actual data points, we can do that with this tab here. So we can see very quickly we were able to get some answers. So if you think in a typical organization like Trailblaze Gear, what this might look like is that you have a business user who communicates with an engineering team, and they might have to have this back and forth where the engineering team has to interpret what the business user wants, has to write some SQL, potentially make a visualization, and this can turn into a vicious cycle. But we can see here that probably with under 20 seconds, we got the answers we needed. And we can keep going, we can dive deeper. So for example, I can see one of these products are Enduro shorts. So these are a pair of shorts which sell really well for Trailblaze. They're our third top selling item. Well, let's say, show me the total monthly sales of the Enduro shorts. So again, when we ask that question, when we ask any question of WisdomAI, we see a familiar pattern. We see an AI workstream open up and we see some sort of result. Now, if I briefly open up this AI workstream, we get a lot more context and detail into exactly what Wisdom is doing under the hood. So here it's telling us some of the context that it's recognized. It's actually given us some examples of previous questions that it has answered similar to the question we've asked. It's given us a step-by-step plan. And again, we can see the SQL that Wisdom has used and run against our data to produce this result that we've asked for, which was the monthly sales of this specific product that we're interested in. And you know what? This doesn't have to stop here either. We can keep going. We can keep asking questions and we can keep getting insight. So which regions are driving sales of the Enduro short? So we're diving a little deeper into the data here. This isn't just a surface level report. This is now a detailed explanation of why this product is selling well. So here we've got a breakdown of the regions of who is selling this short, and we can really see that the South and West region are selling at a better rate than East and Midwest. Wisdom has empowered me as a business user, as someone who needs to get insight from our data. I very quickly eliminated that back and forth between my data engineer or my analyst, and I've got all of the information that I need upfront and quickly. So we've seen how easy it is to get answers from your data and how quickly that can be, and how we can generate charts or visualizations just by typing in a natural language request. But what if we wanted to see a collection of visualizations that together would potentially tell a larger story? So essentially, I'm describing a dashboard, right? So let's see just how easy it can be to create a dashboard with Wisdom. So because we're using the advanced reasoning abilities of an LLM, we can get pretty creative with how we work with Wisdom. So me, myself, personally, I'm a very visual thinker. I love to draw diagrams, get things out of my head quickly onto paper in that way. So what I've done here, I've made a mock-up. I've scribbled down some ideas that I have for a specific dashboard. So we have some KPI cards here at the top. We've got 4 of them. And then we've got 2 charts that I'm really interested in. I want to see revenue over time, and I want to see revenue broken down by store type. So let's see how quickly we can go from this idea, which I've had in my head, I've scribbled down on paper. How quickly can we get this dashboard actually live in WisdomAI? Well, let's try it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to attach that file to the chat, and I'm going to instruct Wisdom, create all of these elements individually. So now I've effectively asked Wisdom several questions all at the same time. And one thing that's really cool in these scenarios is that Wisdom will start to answer these questions concurrently. So it will take each element in that diagram that I drew, and one by one, it will go through and start to generate the metrics and the charts that I've requested. So if we look back at my sketch, we've got 4 KPI cards and 2 charts. So let's see what WisdomAI has come up with. Here is one KPI card, and we can see in tandem, it has produced the next one. It's reviewed, and it's carrying on, and it's going through the process of generating the next visualizations. So here is our third KPI, and eventually it will populate with our two graphs also. So it's told me that it's finished with the metrics cards, and now it's proceeding to create the line chart that I requested and the bar chart, the stacked bar chart also. So here is our line chart, and here is our bar chart. So now we have our visualizations. Let's put them all together in a singular package where we can really kind of collect these elements, and together they'll tell a story. What I'm going to do, I'm going to select these elements here. I'm going to click Add to Story. I'm going to call this story Chicks Dash. Actually, no, I'm going to call it North Star Metrics. Add to Story. And Wisdom has done a fantastic job of putting all of our visualizations into one singular location, into one story where we can see them all at one time. Now I can edit my visualizations from here. So if I click Edit, just the same way we saw in the chat, you know what? I want to turn this line chart into a stacked area chart. I think that would represent this data a little bit more clearly. Really nice. We can see that now. That's a really nice change. But you know what? We're not done there either. Let's add a few more elements. I'm going to add an AI summary to this dashboard. So I just added a widget. It appears here at the bottom. I'm going to rearrange this dashboard just to make this visually a little bit more appealing. I'll move this chart down to the bottom and make this one a little bigger. And all of a sudden, we've gone from a sketch that I drew on paper to a fully functioning dashboard that gives us lots of insight into our business. We have our KPI cards. We have an executive summary up at the top, which tells us everything that this dashboard is saying. And this summary is regenerated every time you open this dashboard. Now, just like we've seen with the chat, analysis doesn't have to stop at this dashboard. This doesn't have to be a roadblock in terms of the questions and the insight that I want to get from my data. So I can very simply click on any element in this dashboard. I'll pick this one. And I can click on Ask Follow-up Questions. This will take us back to that chat interface. It will show us the visualization, and we can ask our follow-up questions as needed and dive deeper into our analysis. So we've seen how to create some visualizations. We've seen how to interact with the chat, and we can see how quickly Wisdom can give us the insight that we need. But before we transition to taking a look at the back end of WisdomAI, let's review one more feature. Let's take a look at something we call proactive agents. So a proactive agent is something that will allow Wisdom to not only ask questions when you ask them, but to continuously monitor metrics, trends, or KPIs, or anything else in your data that you care about. So you can really think of a proactive agent as an AI-powered workflow that can run in the background, either on a schedule or on a trigger. So it could automatically look for changes in your data and perform some sort of action when that change happens. So in the left toolbar here, if I click Agents, we can see an agent that I have created previously. So we can configure agents with natural language. And we can set up an agent to track anything. So it might be sales performance, operational bottlenecks, user behavior. If your data talks to the topic that you're interested in and the domain has context relevant, then the agent can perform the task that you describe. So each agent can combine natural language instructions with specific business logic, so it understands exactly what to look for and how to evaluate it. So here, this agent, I've configured it to send a monthly report on our sales by region. And I've asked it to identify what is leading to any change in revenue from the previous month, and to give me some recommendations on things that I might want to follow up on as an analyst at this business. So let's look at a report that this agent has produced. So this is an example of a report. So this report can either be emailed to you or it can be sent to your Slack channel of choice. But what we have here is exactly what I asked for, right? We have an executive summary, which has described some of the sales across our regions. It's highlighted some key findings. It's run some queries and generated some visualizations for me to understand my data. And importantly, it's gone beyond just reporting. It's also given me some recommendations into some of the things that I should look into. Like, for example, in the West, clothing is our largest source of revenue. And this is something that I should potentially check into. It's telling me I should look into my inventory patterns. So we can see this has gone just beyond an automated report. This is something which can really be a springboard for me as an analyst to dive deeper into certain situations or certain triggers or any elements that have been surfaced in this report. So we've seen visualizations, we've seen dashboards, and we've taken a quick look at proactive agents as well. And we've really seen how proactive agents can boost our productivity, how it can work in the background, and ultimately keep an eye on our data while we're thinking and doing more important things. But with that foundation in mind, let's now transition to the back end of Wisdom, where all of the intelligence that powers these agents, that powers these visualizations, and every insight Wisdom generates, let's really see how that all comes together. So if I go into the left toolbar again, I click on domains, and I can search for the domain that we were just querying. So here is the domain. And what the domain is, really, it's a central resource for WisdomAI. It's a resource that Wisdom will use to answer any question that is relevant to the domain. It contains everything the system would need to interpret a user's request and respond accurately. So to do that, it needs the data itself. It needs to know the relationship between the data and our tables. But crucially, it also needs to have all of the institutional knowledge surrounding your data. So this might be your data definitions, your metrics, any definitions of technical jargon or business rules. This is all captured in the knowledge fabric, or what we call the knowledge fabric. So in this domain, we can see we have those things that we mentioned. We have the data. So here we have 4 CSV tables that we've connected, but it's worth mentioning that in production, Wisdom is designed to connect to your enterprise data warehouse. So we can connect to many different sources, but here are the main warehouses that we support. And this list is ever growing, but all of the main data warehouses that you would expect to see are here. So Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift, Postgres, all of the main connections are there and supported. So we have the data connection. Now, just another point to make very quickly is that we are working with structured data here. So we're connected to CSV tables, but it's important to note that Wisdom can work with unstructured and semi-structured data also. So say, for example, you have text-based documents stored in an S3 bucket. We can connect to that just in the same way we connect to your data warehouse, and we can use that text-based data in combination with our structured data, and we can uncover insights with all of those disparate data sources. So we can connect to many sources at the same time, simultaneously, and query them all under a central banner, under a central location where we can get insight from each data source as they appear. So we have the data connection, but the other crucial part I mentioned in the domain is the knowledge fabric. So this is where all of the context we provide to Wisdom is, And it's here that Wisdom can truly understand your data, much like an analyst on your team would. So it includes a lot of your business definitions that your team relies on and the logic behind your metrics. So what we're looking at here, firstly, is natural language context. So if we look at some of these specific points, average selling price, or ASP, it means the sum of revenue divided by the sum of units sold. This is a description of a metric, ASP, and it's pointing specifically where in our data you need to calculate that. So these are all natural language sentences which explain something about our data. So this is a really important pillar of our knowledge fabric. Then we move on to reviewed queries. So what a reviewed query is, it's where we pair a natural language question or request, and we pair that with an actual SQL query. So here we've got the question, show total revenue for Enduro shorts. This was the question that we looked at earlier. Well, behind the scenes in Wisdom's domain, we have that question paired with the exact SQL query that Wisdom should use to deterministically answer the question that is requested. So here we're really bridging the gap between the probabilistic nature of the LLM in its interpretation of our question, and we're marrying that to the deterministic nature of your data through SQL. And what will happen is that anytime a user asks this question, Wisdom has this query cataloged and it's prepared to answer this question again with the relevant SQL. So that's the other pillar of our knowledge fabric here. It's our reviewed queries. This is something which a data administrator is responsible for. So a data administrator in your workspace has access to the entire chat log. So they can audit all of the questions that have been asked by a user. They can dive into the exact chat log itself. But crucially, they can go into a chat and they can give feedback. So this is a request and it's had an output. And as a data administrator, I can go in and give thumbs up and I can say, yes, this natural language request was answered accurately by this SQL query. And I can confirm that. Now, that query is logged into our catalog, into the domains catalog. And if someone asks that question again, Wisdom knows exactly how to respond accurately and consistently give the correct answer. So by creating and configuring this domain, where we've defined both the data and the context, we've effectively set up guardrails for what Wisdom can answer and how it should answer. So if I ask a question which isn't relevant to the domain, if I ask something like, what's the weather like today? Wisdom will recognize that this is a question that isn't relevant to the domain, and it won't hallucinate, it won't make up an answer. It will just inform the user that I can't answer this question, but hey, here's some questions which I can answer. These are some really good topics for you to dive into. So you can kind of compare when we configure a domain, it's kind of like writing a menu that your users can order from. When a user orders something from the menu, Wisdom knows exactly how to respond, just like at a restaurant, when someone orders off of the menu, the kitchen knows exactly how to turn the raw ingredients into exactly what was ordered. And if they ask for something that isn't on the menu, Wisdom will handle that gracefully. So that's a little bit about the domain. We've seen the back end and how that operates. We've also seen the front end and how a user can access the chat interface and can ultimately get insight. WisdomAI really brings together natural language analysis, proactive insights, and a deeply configurable backend to give your team a smarter, faster way to work with data. By combining your domain, your data, the relationships between your data and our knowledge fabric, and Wisdom AI's reasoning ultimately, you create a system that really understands your business and delivers answers that you can trust. So whether you're exploring trends, or if you're automating reports, or just empowering non-technical users to self-serve, Wisdom AI becomes a true partner in your organization's decision-making.